It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time to Cube.
Love picks up Curry. Kyrie Irving from downtown. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James.
It's over. The 52-year drought is over. The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship.
Cleveland, this is for you.
Sexton works on Irving.
He knocks it down.
He checked time.
Allen to Garland, 1 second left from midcourt.
Strongest goal. Oh, what a rejection by Mobley.
And he throws the hammer down.
The shoot-around.
Right now, the Cavs have about 10 games left. They have won 2 of the last 3, playing with a ton of chemistry against Denver and Detroit, but really looked lost against the Lakers. What do you think, Colin?
I completely agree, Adam. They showed us how well they can play against some pretty tough competition in Denver and Detroit, but they're still a young team, and that showed up against the Lakers for sure. Hopefully a loss like that does help them in the playoffs.
The Cavs could have clinched a playoff spot by beating the Lakers. They also needed the Rockets to beat the Wizards. It would have been truly poetic coming against the kid from Akron. As we know, the Rockets won, but our Cavs lost. Are you concerned the moment is overwhelming this young team?
I am concerned because the Lakers are playing so poorly this year. In previous iterations of LeBron-led teams that have come to visit Cleveland, it made sense why the players would get caught up in playing against, it's not even an argument anymore, the best player of his generation. So that was concerning to me to see that our Cavaliers this year, they're 41-31, and they're playing against a team that's the opposite. You know, the Lakers have only won 31 games this year. Every week, it seems like LA is going through some type of kerfuffle of Russell Westbrook losing his mojo and LeBron being upset, not even wanting to talk to the media after games. So I was concerned by the fact that this is a team that is rudderless, and they came in and put up the most points against the Cavs since opening week when they played Memphis. So that was concerning to me. It also seemed like they had kind of moved forward in the season a little bit with their wins against Denver and Detroit, because Detroit had beaten them the last 2 games that they played against each other, and the Cavs were able to overcome and actually beat Detroit. So that was where I was concerned. I'm not hopeless or down in the dumps about it. It just seems like the Cavs had an actual chance to seal the deal, and they crumbled under it. And given they have a lot of stuff going on with the team, obviously with injuries, and they're still trying to figure out lineups and whatnot, it was just a little frustrating to see that they couldn't really pull off a victory. Were you equally concerned, or were you kind of thinking, of course, it's LeBron, so why wouldn't they bow to the king?
I've been sounding the alarm for weeks. Our defense doesn't exist anymore, especially in the first half. We're giving up 30, 40 points in quarters, and we're down, 10, 15 points at the half, even though we've got 55, 60 points at the half. So I'm concerned. I've been concerned. I don't know what the answer is supposed to be. I imagine they're gassed because even though they're a young team, they have been, we've talked about it, their lineups are so back and forth, and playing with each other, their minutes are so back and forth. They've had to really compensate for the injuries the entire season and the fact that they started with the hardest schedule out of any team in the league. And even though they've had one of the easiest schedules since the All-Star break, it really hasn't been. If you look at the next 10 games, there's not a game there that you can be confident we're going to win it, because each team is either battling for playoff position or they're battling to get it at all, or we've just become one of those teams that everybody's happy to go in and beat because it means something for their organization. So all 3 things are working against us now, and we don't play defense. So I am very concerned that if we don't figure this out, and just looking at the last 10 games we've played, we've been averaging over 100 points. We've been averaging about 110, 115 points a night. But the teams that we're playing are also averaging those points, if not more. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot to start the games. It doesn't matter that we have these rallies in the third quarter. By the fourth quarter, we're gassed and they come back and beat us.
Yeah, I also think they got into some bad habits because there's this whole movement right now with Cavs Twitter with the Cavalanche, where they're able to come back, especially all those wins against Indiana. The beginning of the season, a lot of those wins were their defense. Single-handedly, they were able to lock teams down, and then they kind of ventured over into this Cavalanche territory. They're still a young team. They're trying to figure things out. And they think, oh, we can rely. We know the buckets are going to come. And in this instance, they just didn't. And you could also tell, you and I have watched so many LeBron games. There were just so many instances where LeBron was just like, no, this game is over. And the Cavs did fight back, but when the Lakers move LeBron into that center position, they do it for a reason, because he is much older and slower than he was even a few years ago. But that also means that he's the fastest center on the floor. He's not the tallest, but he's probably stronger than most NBA centers except like Embiid and two other guys.
We lost it in the second quarter because we came out and we got cocky and it looked like we were going to really, whoop them. 35-28 to end the first quarter. It should have been more like 45-18 the way that we played. And then in the second quarter, they had 39 points against us. That's what's going on. We have these games where we're scoring finally. We're doing well on the offensive side, but the defensive side is gone. And if you're going to let a LeBron-led team come into Cleveland and play a game, he's going to beat you in the fourth. So that's one quarter already you're going to lose. That second quarter was brutal, and I felt once that happened, I was very skeptical the rest of the game that we were going to win it.
Are you telling me that LeBron is good? Like he's a pretty good basketball player?
Yeah, he's got a little bit left in the tank, it seems. Those 50-point games he had coming in. And that's another thing, too. Like you mentioned, the Lakers, they're coming in hot, right? They've got a streak that they've got going on with winning, and for good reason, because they're knocking on the door for a play-in position. That's a team that was, touted to possibly be number one in the West and almost a shoo-in to go to the finals when they got Westbrook, may not even make the playoffs. So that game meant a lot for both teams, but it meant more for the Lakers. And I expect a team with that many All-Stars, that many Hall of Famers, to be able to figure it out against a young team like ours with, 10 games left in the season. So I'm not disappointed that we lost. It's more of the same. It's like, okay, well, again, as a broken record here, we don't play defense. Doesn't matter who comes in and plays us. Like we're now shooting the ball well, so now we have to stop people again.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that going into the playoffs, if they're able to avoid the play-in, they have to figure out if defense is going to be the thing that they hang their hat on, they have to adjust, obviously, or their game plan needs to change a little bit where it's more maybe lineup specific, where they're rotating guys in and out a little bit differently. Maybe they're switching a little bit more. Something that allows them to get traction a little faster in the game versus, there were instances where they had 5-point swings that all of a sudden the game was just out of hand. One of the reasons why I love this team is, unlike last year, unlike the year before, even some of the LeBron games or LeBron era teams, this is a team that there's a chance that they will always try to win, where I think in the past that hasn't always been the case. I mean, they've been out of so many games, even this year and last year. There were some wins that they got just because they kept staying in it, where they're able to stay within 5-6 points even this season, and they're getting somewhere. So that's also a little bit of part of it where you see how much they are able to hustle. And so you're just hopeful that they're able to get that little spark to finally put them over the top. And they just can't when you have superstars like LeBron, leading a team.
Yeah. And the other side, too, I think it has to be mentioned, and we'll move more into the coaching here in a minute. But the other thing, too, is that it's disappointing. Bickerstaff's coaching staff came in last year and this year, with some stated goals, some obvious goals on the defensive side. And I think every year now, both years, I've seen those goals kind of be stripped away as the season goes along, because of conditioning, maybe. And part of that conditioning is because of the devastating injuries we constantly have. So like you can't, if we had any continuity there or consistency there, then that's another story. So I'm not blaming them, obviously, for that. I am concerned that it's a priority in the first 30, 40 games, and then at the end of the season, it's not anymore. But I thought that's what really gave us our edge. Sure. We played inside-out basketball like the 90s or the early 2000s teams did, and we played, tough defense in order to kind of lock teams down because we weren't going to score 120, 130 a night. And now all of a sudden, maybe we will, but on those nights, we're not going to stop a team from scoring the same amount. Yeah. And that's when I start to feel like I'm watching the Mike D'Antoni Suns. Mm-hmm. And that's, that's my least favorite kind of basketball. But yeah, I am concerned that it's not a priority, and going to the playoffs, these next 10 games, it would be really great to see at least 5 or 6 of those games be games that we prove we can stop a team defensively. And not just win because we persevered and made enough shots at the end to barely, get the game.
For sure.
All season the Cavs have championed playing like junkyard dogs. Last month, Coach J.B. Bickerstaff introduced the quote junkyard dog chain to be given to players after games who echoed this mentality. What does this tell you about his coaching approach, and is he your favorite Cavs coach in history?
First of all, I think he understands the mentality of the players in the NBA today. Players of today want to play with former players and people who think like them, and also want a fun, relaxed environment. That's something that I may not have always appreciated when reading, they're not having fun. It's like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. That job doesn't necessarily require it to always be fun. But it does require it for you to enjoy it in some level, that you are satisfied that you're doing the work, I think is always very beneficial, that you can find that place in life. And the fact that they're making millions of dollars to put a ball through a hoop, they're already, to me, having fun. Mm-hmm. But Bickerstaff promotes the right type of fun in the locker room, and that's what I think that chain is. It's a nice symbol that they can rally around, and now they've got these team shots after every game that they can share, and they're mugging on each other and having a great time. It's a bonding experience. It's just another aspect, and it's cool because from a fan base or even from just the media, if they're paying attention, it's an opportunity to look on the inside of what their relationship is like with each other and how they form those bonds as the season goes along. So it's great because you and I think, have felt like the coaching staff has had the team in good hands for the last several seasons. It's not, yes, our record has been hard and we've watched some pretty bad basketball, but I've never felt that it's been because of the coaching staff or the direction or the leadership of the coaching staff. I just think it's been the growing pains of a youthful organization coming out of a championship run that left everything decimated in its wake. So to wrap, just on my first statement of it, I think he's definitely one of my favorite coaches in a long time.
Yeah.
Because of the style of play that he implemented when coming in to coach the team. They're rough, they're gritty, they scrap for every ball, they are tenacious out on the court, and they play for each other. there's a lot of team-based basketball and camaraderie that I see, and that's always going to start with the coaching. And so you got to give it to JB. I love that he is bringing something back into the NBA that I would call more of like a 90s or early 2000s style of play.
Definitely. I also think you touched on their chemistry, and outside coaches have talked about it, and other players have talked about the team's chemistry, and I think that starts with JB. Bill Simmons has he's written a book of basketball, and he's obviously done his weekly podcasts, and one thing that he highlights is something that a team needs to be an X factor team, a team to succeed, is they need chemistry. They need to like each other. And you can tell every player on that team, I mean, they enjoy playing with each other every day. And this is through countless injuries that, having Rubio leave, bringing in Karras. And that starts with JB. I feel like, he's also clearly pushed Garland to be more of a leader, but he's allowed these guys to be leaders without stepping on that, right? So I think one thing that's so cool about the chain in my mind that is this was started with Lamar Stevens. Lamar Stevens going into the season, he might have even been thinking some days, am I even going to crack the rotation? Because there were so many injuries last year. Part of him might have thought, there's no way we could have this many again, right? And here's a guy who was like, well, no, I'm still going to coin and use this phrasing of junkyard dog. And JB took that from a guy who on any other team, would be considered, a 10th or 11th man. And Lamar is much more than that to this team. So clearly JB respects the idea of roles and people doing their job and fulfilling certain roles, but I don't think he wants his players to think any of them are above each other, which I really admire. This whole time you and I have alluded to, is Kevin Love going to be traded? Is he going to move coming into the season? And one thing that we really haven't talked about much, but one thing that kind of has let Love stay in Cleveland is the fact that he's had a relationship with JB previously when he was in Minnesota. He clearly has the respect of the players as well. I mean, Ty Lue is a great coach. He's proven that he's better than just, I had LeBron, so that's why I was able to win a championship. LeBron had so many coaches that coached him. Lue and JB are the guys that stand out just in my mind of ones that I've watched that I kind of gravitate toward. Mike Brown, he was a cool guy. Sure.
Seemed like a nice man.
Yeah.
Blatt seemed like a jerk.
Yeah. We forgot about Beeline too. So there was that other old white guy. So
it's easy to forget about him.
Yeah.
It's a very, very sad ending for Beeline. Ty, I think, is a player's coach for sure, but he's more of a likable guy. I have a lot of respect for Ty Lue. I don't know if he'd have a championship ring if it wasn't for coaching LeBron. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's ever going to get another championship ring without coaching another player like LeBron. Yeah. Whereas I think Bickerstaff could get a ring without having a player like LeBron on his team. Yeah. And that's because, it's a freak of... It's like saying that Phil Jackson wouldn't have won any rings without Michael or Kobe. Well, maybe not. Probably not. Yeah. Even though everybody thinks he's the greatest coach, right? So I don't know what to say. But Ty Lue, I had a lot of love and respect for the guy, and I really wanted him to be coach when he was assistant coach. Yes. But I'm thrilled that JB is our coach. And there's nobody in the league that I'd want other than maybe Popovich, and at this age, I don't want him. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I really do love JB for everything that he's brought to the team. And from the other standpoint, too, back with the Kyrie Irving Waiters days, there was a revolving door basically on the roster. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't been the case in this rebuild with JB. Mm-hmm. they've really kept continuity, especially when it comes to some of the low, like far on the end of the bench guys, like a Lamar Stevens or a Dylan Windler. Some of these guys that I think most coaches would have given up on, would have said, okay, let's move on. We just need to find somebody else. He identifies talent, and then he's loyal to the decisions that he makes for the guys that he plays. And I think that's no more evident than in how he chooses to dish out minutes. You can be a starter or off the bench. You still might play the same minutes because he's not going to favor the title more than the need of the team.
For sure. I liked that he benched Cedi earlier in Cedi's weird playing. Last season, Cedi had a stretch that was brutal. He had like a 10 or 12 game stretch, and I know the injuries were even worse last year, so I'm sympathetic to Bickerstaff. At the same time, it seemed like he really was trying to head that off at the pass, and that's trying to trust in his relationship with Cedi, you know, where it wasn't going to turn into something else. It was just, hey, take a beat. I like that he's played Moses Brown a little bit more. I kind of wished he played him a little bit more against the Lakers, just because Lowry he's doing God's work in spelling for center play. At the same time, he isn't used to that, and Moses Brown has been a center his entire NBA career. So I would have liked to see that. He's also a little faster than Lowry, which is remarkable. So his loyalty to his players, his trust with the scouting staff and with Altman has proven that he's able to kind of be this chemistry maker in a way that is so beneficial for such a young team. There are so many young teams in the NBA that aren't doing what the Cavs are doing currently, and historically have never done what the Cavs have done. Part of me selfishly thinks, like, man, I wish we would have had a coach like JB when LeBron first came into the NBA. I think it could have gone a little bit differently.
The final seconds.
Is Kelly Olynyk still the most hated opponent of the Cavs?
I think that Kelly Olynyk is the most hated opponent. He stopped the Cavs from potentially winning a championship. Could have ended Kevin Love's career. It was still one of the most Bush League plays I can think of in the NBA, and I am always gobsmacked that he's still playing. It must be super awkward when he sees Kevin Love.
Kelly Olynyk pulling Love's arm out was one of the most Bush League plays I've ever seen in my life. And it was upsetting at the time, and it's upsetting to think about now. And I don't know how Love just doesn't want to punch him in the face every time he sees him. But this stuff is different for them than it is for us. Even though the injury was done to Love, the greatest injury really was to the hopes of the playoff run that we were on. And that year, especially, when Kyrie broke his kneecap, we really would have won that series. It's tough to say that because it's like, well, you didn't. But when, your best player is still in running for MVP even though you lost, that's that. So thanks,
Definitely.
Kelly.
Yeah. Thanks,
You'll
dude.
be hated here for forever. When
Don't
you die,
buy
we might
real
go,
estate
oh,
here."
that's sad. But the guy pulled Kevin Love's arm out, so...
LeBron is now the number 2 scorer of all time. Do you think he will pass Kareem to become number 1?
Yeah, I think he will. If life gets in the way, then no, he won't, because he's old and you just never know. He could be an Achilles injury away. But all signs point to yes. He's averaging 30 points this year. If he can do that next year, he'll score enough points to beat him. So, and he wants to play till his son comes in the league, as we mentioned in previous podcasts. So he'll definitely surpass him if he plays until then.
Yeah, I don't see how he doesn't pass Kareem. I didn't expect LeBron to ever be the all-time scorer when he first came into the league, just because I knew he was such a good passer. I don't think I thought that he would play this long because it is a really long career. And I thought that he could get like in the top 10 or the top 5 for sure. But to be the number 1 potentially of all time is quite surprising to me. And I mean, obviously hats off, because he's really adjusted his game. I mean, he's able to hit threes from the logo. I mean, he's able to just generate offense, as we saw as he beat our team. So he's just so much more efficient now with his shot. So, yeah, hats off, man.
Yeah, I would just make one caveat to the stat in general. I would be curious to see how many shots he takes in a season and how many points are averaged by the team every season, and then compare that to Kareem and his career.
Yeah.
Because I think in today's NBA, it's a lot easier to score.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking anything away from LeBron. I just think that's just one little caveat to it. Because I think if Michael Jordan played in today's NBA, I think he would have surpassed Kareem, with 4 or 5 seasons left of his career, which is what LeBron is doing now. So I think when you have a prolific shooter and somebody that really studies the game and plays the way that they both did and have.
Dean Wade has a partial tear in his meniscus and will likely be out for 3 to 4 weeks. Are you ready to try out for the team, since they need bodies?
I'll do anything these Cavs need me to do to keep them healthy. That was such a gut punch to see that Wade also had this partial tear in his meniscus. The fact that they have 2 players that this has happened to, I don't think I've ever seen that with any NBA team. Maybe if they're all in the same car accident. If the Cavs need to call us just to stand in the way of other opponents to maybe so they get a fluke injury just for a few games, that's fine with us. Anything to try to get them healthy again.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if people were coming into Cleveland and injuring themselves here, but it's just us. And so I think the Cavs are cursed. And I don't know what we have to do to get the bad juju out, but it's bad, man. It's bad. Every week we kind of poke fun at it, but also are totally dead serious and are crying inside that our guys are falling like football players in a non-contact sport. And again, it's a meniscus tear, which you probably have to think about once every 10, 15 years when you follow this sport. I don't think that their practicing has increased. I don't think that the wear and tear that they're putting on their bodies has increased. I think that in general, the NBA, as all other sports organizations, has just gotten better at conditioning and all of that. So I don't know what we're doing. I don't know if it's in the water. You'd have to think that the training staff is sitting around talking about this, going like,
crying.
Okay, why? Yeah. Why can we not keep our guys healthy? Broken record on this one, man. I don't know what else to say. That's sad. I guess we have to be thankful that it isn't what Colin Sexton's injury was, that, it's probably fine, and then no, you're out for the season. We don't need Dean Wade for the season, but right now, because of all the injuries we have, man, we do.
Yeah, hopefully he comes back for the playoffs.
Right.
Cedi came back with 16 points off the bench, shooting close to 60% from the field against Detroit. When he is playing well, is he our best bench player?
I'm leaning to a no, because we just have so many phenomenal bench players to choose from when we're actually healthy. We were just talking about that. So I don't know. It's a tough call. Some nights, yes, and that's great because we need him to be. Some nights, no, and that's bad because sometimes he's overshooting. He's compensating too much. I think Bickerstaff, as we mentioned before, has been better about subbing him in and out for what makes more sense for the flow of the game or the matchups that they're facing. I lean more towards Karras being probably our best bench player right now. It's just that we haven't seen enough of him and he hasn't had enough time to gel with the offense. Kevin Love is probably a hard second in my mind because of the kind of sixth man quality that he's played this season. He's been far more efficient from three than anybody else most of the time. So, and Cedi really, you get the most out of Cedi's big threes. So they're comparable there. So no, he's kind of like evenly tied with a few other people, and that's the brilliance of the way the Cavs have designed this team. That you've got 3 or 4 people on the bench that you just need 1 or 2 of those guys every night to step up. You don't need all of them. So, and Cedi sometimes is that guy.
Yeah, I agree. I point to Love definitely for this season, where Love's efficiency has just been off the charts, and his threes are more timely. His threes seem to have a little bit of a greater impact, and a lot of times Love is able to hit a few threes in a row. It's been more than a couple of games where Love is able to hit 3 threes in a row, and that completely changes the tide for the Cavs, where Cedi's had maybe 1 or 2 games like that, but it hasn't been as consistent. And I also think that he still is a little loosey-goosey on offense. When I think of Cedi, remember when the Cavs won their championship? A lot of people forget this, but Kyrie got the ball back and like dribbled down at the other end of the court and like threw it off of a dude and then got the ball back. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That's Cedi's whole vibe. But he does that for an entire game, mm-hmm. right? So I think that Cedi he seems to get lost in his own. He gets in his own way too much to be the best option. But when he's hitting his shots, he clearly can be deadly.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!